little bit late. Appreciate your patience. Scott?
Sure. Roll call. Brown.
Here.
Cargill.
Here.
Mays.
Here.
Gadovich.
Here.
Seifert.
Here.
Gunderson.
Here.
Haven. Not here. All right. Mr. Chairman, we'll do that form.
All right, thank you. All right, can you all join me in the pledge, please? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody. Welcome. Okay. First order of business, we have the minutes from November 19th of 25. Everybody get them, read them?
Move to accept as printed.
A motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Put some microphones on.
All right. First request tonight, microphones. Show how this one works. It works. Okay, so all in favor of accepting the minutes of November 19th, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Just put it on your ear, Mitch.
Over here. We'll try it. Is that better?
Thank you.
No problem. Everybody else get theirs out?
Just push it.
The light one.
No. I'll project.
It's over.
Don't worry about it. I'll just talk about it.
It's good? Okay, so we're here at the master plan tonight, and with that, John, you have the floor, sir.
Hey, good evening. Tonight we have, Planning Commission is, the plan here is to review, take a look at the last three chapters of the master plan. Chapter 10 is the land use analysis and character zones. Some of that you've already seen in previous meetings, but you're seeing the whole chapter. Chapter 11 is the future land use map, and chapter 12 is the implementation, which is the action plan. Under chapter 10, one of the things that we did, made a change from one of the previous maps. We are using the Emmett County Equalization property maps or property database to put together what is known as the property classification map, which is based on the assessment codes. The equalization directors and assessors throughout the state use a coding system that has been approved by the state tax tribunal, state tax commission. And that's how they classify property. So like residential improved property would be classified 401. Commercial property is classified, I think, 301, there's 201, exempt property is in the 700 classes. So by taking a look at the classification of property that's assigned by the assessor for a parcel, we're able to map that to come up with the property classification map. And that map gives you kind of like a snapshot, a broad brush review, a look at how the township land use, how the property is being used or classified within the township. So we have it on the screen. The property classification map. The categories, we have 6 basic categories. The first one is ag, which is in green. The second one is residential, which is in the yellow. Commercial is always red. Industrial is a shade of gray. Exempt, which would be public property, either township, city-owned, county-owned, state of Michigan, etc., is classified in blue, a lighter blue. And then tribal property is crosshatched. And some of those parcels are primarily concentrated along the north part of 131. And based on the property classification map and the database supplied by Emmett County through their GIS. We have 5,010 parcels of property that are in the township. 53% of those are classified as residential. 24% is ag, 10% is exempt, 6% is right-of-way and open water, 5% is commercial, 1% is industrial. And the industrial property, even though it's classified as industrial, it's the sand and gravel extraction pits. The assessor, they classify them as industrial. Technically, they are not, they're extraction land uses. Then the tribal property is less than 1% in the township. So that's the makeup of the property classification discussion. You'll note that on the map, like I said, there's quite a bit in green. That is either agricultural, improved, or vacant properties as classified. And then you have the majority, or over half of the properties in the township are classified as residential. You've already looked at and reviewed, and we had these as part of the community open house, which is the framework plan. If you want to hit that, Tammy. Framework plan, I'll review it again, has 5 primary classifications. It's a way of kind of scoping out the fundamental future, how we think the township will develop. We have the urban area, which is basically adjacent to the city of Petoskey. It includes property along the 131 corridor, the 31 corridor, and M119. There is a classification adjacent to that that's called suburban. These are areas that are starting to accommodate single family primarily, some apartments, site condominiums, for example, cluster housing. Then we have the rural classification, which are areas that are primarily very large parcels, some of which are still either vacant or improved agriculture. We have an area that's classified as the River Valley, which runs along the Bear River, primarily formed by the topography. It creates a valley. Within that is a lot of tax exempt property that's owned by DNR, some property by the county. And then we have the nature area, which is in the southeast corner of the township, which are larger lots. Some of that is the Skyline Park Complex that's owned by the city of Petoskey. This area has a lot of woods remaining in it, has a lot of topography. We have large lots, some of which are residential in nature, some are just forested areas. We have, as part of the character zone descriptions on page 25, we have a general description for each one of the character zones. Urban, for example, is very vehicular dependent uses, high density residential development, and subdivisions.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
What page are you on, John?
Page 123.
123.
123. Table 25 is the character zone descriptions. We have a description for suburban, which is medium density site condominiums, rural estates and farms. Some of the land uses that you would find in the suburban framework are site condos and apartments served by well and septic. We have some farms and orchards. In the rural area, it's primarily lowland topography, extensive network of emergent and forested wetlands, and you have some small contractor operations, larger tracts of property, and single-family homes. The river valley is really extensive freshwater, forested, and shrub wetlands, along with some residential homes, primarily that are along the county roads, because the portions of their rear lots are actually part of the wetland complexes, if you look on the aerial photograph. And then, as I mentioned, the nature character zone is primarily rural residential, forested tracts, rolling topography. You have nature areas, trails. You have the North Country Trail, that runs through that area. You have the Skyline Park complex over there and some other exempt properties. So the character zones are set up primarily, they're kind of a tiered fashion. Right around the city of Petoskey, it's urban. Then the next tier down is suburban, which you find a little bit lesser density. And then you get into the more rural characteristics. And then eventually down in the southeast part of the township, it's a nature framework. So you go from north to south, it's more intense, less intense. The idea of creating the character zones is to help also manage any proposed or recommended extension of utilities. So you don't want to extend infrastructure into all parts of the township, only into areas that could accommodate development that are close to the city of Petoskey. We have there's a discussion in this chapter relative to some of the longer range proposed infrastructure, or I should say recommended infrastructure areas that have already been went through feasibility study through the city of Petoskey Water Department, because Bear Creek has its own has a partnership on sanitary sewer. Part of this chapter takes then a look at, because we have land use framework, we also have to take a look at mobility. So the next map is the mobility framework, which really takes a look at some critical areas in the township in terms of both vehicular system, which is the regional network, which is US 31, US 131, and M119. And then you have the sub-regional network, which is River Road, which is County Road 81, and Mitchell Road, which is County Road 58. And then you have your county road system. There is a regional network, which is primarily serves a lot of the commercial and I would say resort and seasonal traffic, people that don't really have a full understanding of the road system within the interior part of the township. But for local folks, they know how to get in and around the township internally through some of the roads such as McDougal, Atkins, Division, Mitchell. So we looked at it as two different vehicular systems, one that's regional, one that's sub-regional. As part of the mobility, we also took a look at the non-motorized system, which includes non-motorized trails. That would be the Little Traverse Wheelway and the Northwestern State Trail. And then you have dedicated bike lanes on 31 along Bayview. And then you have the North Country National Scenic Trail, which runs through the central part and the southeast part portions of the township. So these make up the non-motorized system along with your water trails, which you do have some canoeing and kayaking on the Bear River. So we took a look at the mobility framework. The other component of the mobility framework is we identified, based on crash data and also based on community input, intersections that we believe need some additional safety enhancements, and those are primarily along the US 131 corridor. And I think we're all familiar with those. Lears Road, Intertown, Kemp, for example, roads, they need some additional evaluation based on as the traffic increases relative to clearance, safety clearance and vision areas. In the future, there could be a likelihood for traffic signalization, for example, at some of these intersections, but that'll happen in the future as traffic volumes increase. Based on conversations internally, we also developed or identified non-motorized improvement areas that need to be scoped out later on by the Planning Commission. These are along Lears Road that connect over to Howard, the Mitchell Road and the Division Road area right over here by Township Hall that connects down to the school, and then also connects down to US 31. And then we looked at corridor improvements. We're recommending, we've talked, and it's in the action plan, that one of the action programs for the township in the future, the Planning Commission, is to do a sub-area plan for US 31 between Division and Pickerel Lake Road, in terms of taking a look at more detailed land use, integrating in access management, and taking a look at how some of the undeveloped properties there should be developed. So that area needs a little bit of attention, and we're recommending that the planning commission take a look at that after the adoption of the master plan. And that concludes the chapter 10. Chapter 11 is a look at the future land use, taking a look at the future in terms of kind of a broader scope. The narrative starts out with a more kind of like a snapshot of what is being discussed both at a national and state level relative to potential migration and growth patterns, and how that may impact the Great Lakes area, and more specifically, Emmett County and the areas that are, surround the Great Lakes system itself. And then we get into taking a look at some of the guiding principles that were in the former master plan and reevaluating those, which the planning commission did a couple of months ago in terms of what they felt were priorities, in terms of some of the aspects of the master plan that should be addressed. Of course, the first one came up, providing housing for everyone. That was one of the key results of the community survey that we did this time last year. That was one of the high priorities identified by the community, was providing workforce, affordable housing, different housing types for both the younger and the older population. Planning Commission sees a need to clean up blight, which is an enforcement issue. Proactively guide growth, which is, we've talked about, either we manage growth or growth is gonna manage us. Planning Commission thinks that's appropriate. And then they also look at one of the higher priorities is planning for infrastructure and to develop and maintain safe neighborhoods. On the community side, it's kind of similar. It's clean up blight. It's make US 131, 31, and M19 appealing, retaining farming and farmland, and maintain scenic corridors and the rural character of the township. Now, rural character isn't necessarily the preservation of farmland, because some of the farms here, we have farmland, but it's not being actively farmed. But the township does have some really nice rural landscapes and views, and I think people really like those assets of the township and have identified those. And that was taken into consideration when we did the framework plan in terms of trying to manage growth in and around the city while trying to maintain more rural development in the central and southern part of the township. We have 4 cornerstones in this chapter that look at how to manage growth and what those building blocks would be. For example, under managed growth, we are recommending that the township collaborate with the city of Petoskey and Harbor Springs on future and water and sewer plans that have a regional focus. Development can be guided where you have public water and sewer. So rather than catching up to developments that say I need it, plan for those areas and then guide development into those areas that have access to public water and sewer. We're also focused on higher density residential development and commercial development within the urban zone, not necessarily in the suburban zone or in the rural zone. So that's a way of managing and directing growth. You can consider these building blocks as kind of like defining where your growth and investment areas of the township should be. The next cornerstone is housing, and one of the building blocks under the housing is to maybe take a look at limiting the amount of short-term rentals in the community, which take year-round housing off of the market for families. I know the township has talked about that. There is the ability today, communities to utilize the State Housing Authority House Tax Increment Financing Program, which provides tools to help provide for rental housing, for affordable rental housing, primarily focused on people that are in the workforce. And then discussion about the township. There is discussion at some of the other communities about the possibility of looking at a community land trust, which is a way of basically pulling property together that you can make available for developers to provide certain types of housing on it. Those are kind of long-term strategies. The other cornerstone is economic development. The big thing here that we see is that the city of Petoskey's industrial base is declining, and some of it is basically functionally obsolete. A great example was the Maple Block factory that was vacant for a number of years. There are some other properties in the city that basically have seen their lifespan. It's towards the end in terms of their viability. But at the same time, in the township, we see cropping up throughout the township on some larger lots, some small contractors' operations, because some businesses cannot find commercial business to rent space, okay? So there is an opportunity based on the number of small businesses that will continue to be here. Plumbing, electrical, landscape companies, house management, property management companies, to actually create some form of small commerce and business park to accommodate these type of small uses. And that's within the economic development strategy. And under transportation, it's primarily collaborating with the Michigan Department of Transportation and the Emmett County Road Commission and taking more of a forecasted future look at the transportation system, because some of the intersections within the township are starting to get to a point where they may need, like we said, to have certain enhancements done. Both safety, could be stoplights, or at least caution lights, eventually traffic signalization. But these things should be looked at in advance, as we go. So we're recommending that. We're also suggesting taking a look with Emmett County Road Commission at the county roads to make sure that at some of the key intersections internally within the township, there's sufficient right-of-way for in the future to accommodate things such as left-hand turn lanes, dedicated right-hand turn lanes, so you don't in the future get caught in a pinch where the road system can't be widened to make for more safe traffic because we don't have sufficient right-of-way for those intersections. So we're suggesting that, again, taking a look long range, working with the road commission, identifying some internal intersections that may need to have some additional right-of-way or additional safety enhancement work. Based on the guiding principles and the cornerstones, we were then able to put together the land use classifications. If you want to shift to the future land use map. Future land use map has a number of land use classifications, basically starting with rural residential conservation, which makes up about 16% of the township, approximately 4,000 acres. This would have densities of about one unit per 10 acres to 1 unit per acre, and it's primarily a lot of sensitive landscape and habitat, residential and public and quasi-public land, and that's identified in the dark green, which is primarily in the southeast quadrant of the township. The next classification is residential rural, which is 32% of the township, and that is over 8,000 acres. And that is primarily farms, orchards, vineyards, residential, small business operations, and again, public and quasi-public land. And the density is primarily 1 unit per acre or 2 units per 1 acre. So you have either 1 acre lots or half acre lots. The smallest residential category is actually residential waterfront, which you have a little bit of along Walden Lake, Little Traverse Bay, Round Lake, and Crooked Lake. That's 139 acres. It's relatively 1% of the land use category. And the density there is 2 to 3 units per acre, which is primarily the current density right now of those properties. The next classification is called residential transitional. That's 4,400 acres approximately. That's 17 acres. That's the area that's primarily within the suburban framework area. That density could be from anywhere from 4 units to an acre to 12 units an acre because of either cluster subdivisions, site condominiums, small apartment complexes. You have 432 acres which are called residential historic, and that's primarily Bayview. That makes up 2% of the residential, of the land use acreage in the township. And then you have residential rural, which is the area that's basically adjacent to the city. That has residential, single family, it has duplexes, triplexes, you have townhouses, and you have mixed unit development in that area. That is 27 or 2,500 acres, they make up about 10%. And then we have a classification called public, semi-public, which are public buildings, facilities, parks, open spaces, forest lands that are owned by public agencies. That is 3,600 acres, approximately 14%. Then you have a classification called mixed use, which is primarily adjacent to the city and along the M119 US 31 corridor currently, and that's where you have a mix of commercial offices, personal services, and public and quasi-public. And the density in that area, primarily because of some of the residential, is between 4 units an acre to 12 units an acre. The two non-residential classifications are commercial, which make up about 336 acres, or relatively 1%. A lot of that is primarily along the 31 corridor between Division and the Fochman Industrial Park area, primarily highway commercial uses. And then you have some that are along the 131, which are the Lowe's, the Home Depot, the Walmart, basically the large plaza the big box plaza area. So you have 336 acres. And then we have industrial research and distribution, which is 1%, and that's primarily in the northern part of the township, which is the current industrial park that's off of US 31. And that's the future land use framework. You can see by the coloration, the dark orange is the residential urban, the darker yellow is the residential transitional, the light yellow, which is kind of on the west and central part of the township, and in the southwest corner is the residential rural. You have the small area, which is the historic, which is the Bayview Association, and then you can see a lot of the residential conservation area is the areas that are, a lot of it is owned by the state, the city, but there's a lot of larger residential parcels that are in that area, along with some parcels that are currently forested. And so that's kind of that's the makeup of the future land use map in terms of how it kind of parallels with and ties in with the framework plan. The majority of the land uses obviously are residential in nature in the township with varying degrees of densities, primarily a lot of lower densities. If you look on page 134 of the plan, figure 19, we have dwelling units per acre by residential land use category, and you can see going from conservation to urban, the various land use densities, and obviously urban is probably the highest density, up to 16 units an acre, with conservation is actually the lowest. So you have a variety of different tiers of density that are based on each of the future land use categories. The next chapter is called implementation, and really it's two components. The first one is the zoning plan, which is under the state statute, the Michigan Planning Enabling Act requires that the master plan include a zoning plan. And what that does, it serves as a bridge between the future land use map and the zoning code in terms of identifying if there's any inconsistencies between the future land use map and what the current zoning is. So we looked at the future land use categories as I had described, and we compared them with the comparable Emmett County zoning classification and the zoning district designation, and they mapped out pretty consistently. We did not see any inconsistencies, and we didn't see any need to make or recommend to Emmett County Planning Commission any changes in the county zoning code, because their districts match up pretty well with the future land use categories relative to uses and density. So that the zoning plan is very consistent with the county zoning ordinance. The second part of the implementation chapter is the action plan, which maps out certain actions, responsible parties, time frame, and priority. These are based on internal, the time frame and the priorities are based on our guess, our estimate. These are subject, obviously, to planning commission review and modification, but we have them based on the 4 cornerstones. We have managed growth, which we have 2 actions under: housing, economic development, transportation. We try to make the action plan as feasible as possible within a 5-year time frame. The planning commission and the township will not achieve all of these, but we try to outline these based on capacity in terms of what the planning commission can do and what the township administration can do relative to taking a look at some of these programs. For example, under managed growth, we have an action to preparation of a long-range 20-year water and sanitary infrastructure master plan. The responsible party, obviously, is the township board. The partners would be the city of Petoskey, for example. That's an action. That would be something that could happen over the next 1 to 3 years. That alone, if that was done, that would really help then the planning commission establish and actually make a modification to the urban zone that's been identified in the master plan, because then you would actually know what areas could be served by water and sewer, and that's where you then concentrate your higher density development. And you could then make modifications by possibly even decreasing the zones as they're contemplated now, based on that infrastructure analysis. So that's why something looking further long range is very important relative to the future land use map. And then we have actions for housing, actions for economic development, and actions for transportation, and what their partners would be. The action program is something that the planning commission under state statute, planning commission is required on an annual basis to prepare a kind of a summary memorandum to the township board saying what you have accomplished for that year, and then what you are contemplating on doing next year. And that's where the action plan comes in, because you can use the action plan as part of your guideline on how you map out what you need to do and want to do. And the reason why that's an important document is that you want to get it done before the township board actually considers their budget. Because if there's something in the action program that may need other third-party assistance, you want to identify that as maybe one of the projects that you want to do, and then identify that to the board that you may need outside assistance, like from an engineering firm possibly to help with the feasibility study, for example. So the action plan is a tool or the summary report that you have to prepare on an annual basis. If you dovetail it in with the action plan, that kind of keeps you on track of trying to pick off some of these actions. After 5 years after adoption, the planning commission is required to open up the document again, take a look if you need to make any modifications. Many times, the future land use map doesn't need to be modified, but the action plan does need to be, because you've accomplished some things, and you may wanna add a few more projects for the next 5 years. So that's why, that's how this works. It's kind of a progressive, living document that you can use annually and then every 5 years in order to make your adjustments to your annual work plan. So those are the 3 chapters in summary. 10 is framework, 11 is future land use, 12 is the action plan and zoning plan for the master plan. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it back over to you.
All right, thanks, Jim. Appreciate how you've incorporated all of our previous comments and all the comments we've submitted to you prior to this meeting and worked it all in. So I see a lot of our suggestions are in here, so nice job on that, I appreciate that. Okay, what do we have for John? Anybody have any questions or thoughts on these 3 chapters?
I got a couple questions. Thanks, John. I would echo Mitch, really excellent job putting together all of our thoughts. On the, let's see, page 139, table 28, the beginning of the implementation chapter. Residential transitional is corresponding to RR. And I'm wondering if and I mean, I'm not as familiar with RR, so maybe it is correct, but if we're thinking that transitional zone is going to be like apartments, condos, up to 12 units an acre, which is where we have that transitional zone, would that be better suited to be R2? Because RR is a lower density recreation, is that correct? Okay. I just want to make sure I was remembering that correctly. And then my other question was along Walman Lake on the future land use map. There is some residential transitional, there's some waterfront, and then there's a long stretch of public. Is that supposed to be public, or is that supposed to be residential waterfront, and it was just the wrong shade of blue?
Give me the page number.
The future land use map.
On the map.
Sorry, I should have started with that.
Do you have a page number?
137.
It's the map, there is no page number on the map.
It's in 137.
137.
We're on 137.
I got the map in front of me. Where are you at?
On Wallen Lake. There's a long stretch of public, semi-public, and I'm wondering if that's supposed to be residential waterfront, and it's this wrong shade of blue.
It's the wrong shade of blue, it should be residential waterfront.
That's all I had. Other than that, like I said, you've incorporated all the comments we've sent. You've done a really excellent job, so thank you.
Emma, to your point about the future land use categories, we may want to have R2 and R1, because R1 does have some quadplex, triplex, duplex, and that would be consistent with the residential transitional as well.
Would RR go in that
Instead of R1 and R2, and then residential and conservation, instead of R1, I think it should be FF1 and FF2.
Yeah.
Because those are the larger, maybe even just FF2.
Thanks.
Okay. Well, I read all this. There's a bunch on page 132, and there are a ton of typos.
And the dashes are still there that we were looking at last time.
When reading this whole thing, I found some other stuff even throughout. I have a bunch of earmarks. When I read the whole thing over again, I still found a bunch of things.
Well, just give them to me.
I'm not gonna go through them all,
Update,
no, but
yeah.
since we're doing this chapter, it was page 132, had a bunch.
Okay.
Wish that some spaces, it's double wood,
Yeah, that too.
I got a lot. Down there.
Visually.
And I guess I just questioned too, we keep referring to, like on some of the intersections, and we keep referring to, like, including 131, Kemp Road, Gray Road, 131 and 119, and we keep saying Picker Lake Road, but we have a light at Picker Lake Road now, so do we wanna keep saying Picker Lake Road? Is it completed, or? as an intersection?
I think I never think that an intersection is totally completed.
Okay.
I think you should still keep an eye on Pickerel Lake, because the reason I think it's, the traffic signal works very fine there, but the one concern that I have is you have the it's an acute intersection.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and those tend to be somewhat problematic, but I just think it's, for the plan, it's just, it's something like, let's identify it as maybe a safety enhancement, just keep our eye on it. Okay?
Gotcha.
Questions?
Yeah.
Coming, is that board level?
Yeah, it's still at the board level. I'm gonna, as soon as we're done with the board level, then we'll go out to public comment time. All right, Jeff?
John, on 132, you talked about this community land trust.
Yep.
Have you worked with other communities that utilize this?
It's relatively new. I know that the city of Frankfurt and the area down there has recently created, last year they created a community land trust. I guess a good example here, we don't have a community land trust in Emmett County, but the closest thing that we put over in the harbor area. Yeah, but the one example I would say is the Petoskey Harbor Springs, the foundation got involved in helping package property for development. That's kind of what a community land trust does. The foundation that's part of their mission as well, but some communities now are putting in place a community land trust. And that's where it works very similar to a foundation, where residents or people that are interested, businesses primarily, can contribute money to the trust, and then the trust responsibility, their board goes out and identifies and purchases property, and then they are able to work with the developers on making the property available for development by trying to reduce the cost of the overall project by basically putting in as equity into the project the cost of the land that they have. So even though the construction cost is still relatively high, when you look at the land and construction cost together, the overall project it comes out at a lower number, and therefore the rents don't necessarily have to be as high as they normally would be. So that it's a relatively new concept. We're saying that we encourage the formation, the planning commission to take a look at it, but I think this is more than just a community. I think in terms of long-term, we talked about this before, I think in long-term, looking down the road 15, 20, 25 years, the communities adjacent to the city of Petoskey, Bear Creek, the city of Petoskey, Harbor Springs, Little Traverse, for example, city of Harbor Springs, have to start looking at issues on a regional and collaborative basis, like water, sewer, transportation, housing, rather than everybody trying to solve the problem on their own. They need to collaborate and form informal partnerships or authorities in order to get that done. And that would be something long-term everybody should be taking a look at.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, Jim, you got anything, or? You guys have anything? Oh, go out to public comment. Tammy, do you want to add anything from about the public?
Just to elaborate on that a little bit, there is a harbor area residential trust that has been established in Harbor Springs, and the Northern Home CDC has collaborated with them, and they did purchase a house, and the land is owned by the trust, and the house itself is owned by an individual. And so they started with that one. I think they're looking at other options for other development to maybe buy a piece of vacant land and build something. But that is happening here in Emmett County. And Northern Home CDC does have several partnerships in the Emmett County area, in the city of Petoskey particularly, and in Bear Creek Township as well.
Okay. All right, guys, if you don't have anything else, we'll go to the public. Okay, so we'll open up the public public, so just like, any other meeting, limited 3 minutes, if you'd like your comments put in the public record. Feel free to, stand up and go to the podium and state your name and your address, please. Tom, did you wanna say
I
something?
do. Tom Yerman, Bear Creek Township. The podium, am I good here?
Yeah.
On that page 133, you guys are talking about intersections and so forth. One huge one that is not in there is Intertown Road intersection. Should be incorporated in that paragraph there. Some intersection, Bear Creek Township, including Intertown Road. Prior to the case that was just approved, that's been a hot topic for 20 years here. So I think that should be incorporated in that paragraph there.
Thanks, Tom.
And to John's point where he was just saying collaborative effort, we've talked about that multiple times, not only Bear Creek Township, but get with Resort Township, City of Petoskey, City of Harbor, Springvale. All these communities all need to help with this whole big master plan in Emmett County, which we're doing the Emmett County Master Plan, but Bear Creek Township seems to be the hot spot. We get all the pressure, we need to supply housing, we need to do this, we need to do that. But we as a board, planning commission board, township board, has to get that out. To John's point, we need, like the sewer authority was brought in, Joe Hoffman's dad helped part of that 30, 40 years ago, 50 years ago. So if we plan on moving out here, then a lot of puzzles, pieces of the puzzle have to be put together. I stated in different meetings, we gotta think outside the box. The city of Petoskey, there's 40 acres of land sitting in there that can be developed in a different ways, just sitting vacant. You get on the GIS or I look on my hunt stand, it shows properties, 20 acres sitting there, the old Kmart site, that's 20 acres of ground there, sitting there, basically, kind of idle. There's the industrial park, as John said, the old paper plant and Kibosky Ready Mix, all that ground sitting there kind of idle. So, just with that being said, we think outside the box on this plan. I got multiple little notes, but just corrections and so forth, so. But anyways, kind of what I'm thinking as a, as a resident, and the rural character, I think the map we need to do some work on. It's hard to read this small map, but I think there's some lines that need to be readjusted in the future line use.
Okay.
Anyways, thanks.
Thanks, Al, appreciate it. Anybody else like to speak? Anybody at all? Carol?
I was just thinking, and it was mentioned a little bit, but I think that our house is in farm forest, but yet on these maps, it's on, I think it was suburban. And I don't quite know how the two coincide, if you're going to redo the county, is that zoning that says it's farm forest? Or whatever that is, that needs to coincide, I would think, with what you're proposing. You don't just have umpteen different things that people are looking at when they wanna move in somewhere. It should all kind of go together. And in my head, farm, forest, and suburban's not the same thing. And just, you all know I like local history a whole bunch. It wasn't several years that Michigan Maple Block sat vacant. I believe it was either 2 or 3. They were actually working up until the time they had to close because of COVID.
Thanks, Carol. Anybody else?
I'll go,
Oh, sorry, Karen.
sorry, okay, I'll go ahead, because I'm gonna kind of follow up with what Carla was saying. I have to come up here
Okay.
because of a lot of papers, so, and I think I've said this before, but it would be looking at my property, okay, I'm on Kemp Road, and, just all of the descriptions and classifications and all of that. So I looked at section 10, and hopefully I'm saying this right, but section 10 is current, okay? So my property classification would be residential, okay? Then I'm looking at the framework plan, and so I guess my property classification would be suburban. And so there are the character zones descriptions, and I was kind of confused about the location under there because it really doesn't address that suburban area kind of over on that west side. It, you know, it has Belmer Road, Pickerel Lake, Shanley Road and that. And then over on the land use type in that last column, the sentence just drops off. I don't know what else there is for land uses there. It says site condominiums, apartments, farms, orchards, and,
What page are you on?
that would be page 123. It's table 25. So yeah, my property then now would be suburban and, medium density and that. Then I'm looking at the future land use section. For my property, it goes to residential transitional. Table 27 on page 135, and it has, you know, the classification there, regulated uses and that. It's kind of confused about low density residential with a density of 1 or 12 units to 1 acre. As far as like, is that compatible with low density residential? I don't know. I'm just asking, I'm kind of questioning it. So yeah, that's another classification for my property. And then you go to implementation on section 12, and it's residential transitional. The comparable Emmett County zoning says recreation residential. The zoning district designation, and I think you were just talking about that, it would be an R1, R2, rather than, yeah. So, right now in farm forest though. So what does that mean in terms of a rezoning happening for that area? I don't know, I guess I'm just asking that question. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Anyone else?
I just have one question.
Sure.
Todd Flynn, what does the term affordable housing mean? Can you quantify that in these master plans?
I'll let John, if he wants to address anything after Todd. Thanks.
I got,
Follow up?
and I had that same concern that Karen had there on 123 there, the urban, suburban, two different, it's kind of, shouldn't where it says land use type, apartments and so forth, maybe be put up into urban rather than suburban on that table 25, I guess and then where she referenced back over, I have that highlighted too, over to
135?
135, it kind of, same thing, we're residential, yeah, we're semi-residential, or whatever that, it gets kind of confusing, residential transition, residential rural, we're kind of, I was trying hard to follow that also too, so
Okay.
that's some
Thanks, John.
need to work out there, and the framework plan also needs some work on it also, I think.
Anybody else?
Thanks, Mitch.
Mine's on a little different, subject, and my subject is the Open Meetings Act, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because there's some confusion as to the meeting being canceled last night, and then the meeting today, and if you look online, it's really hard to just figure it out. So I'm just gonna read so everybody understands what I'm trying to explain. The Open Meetings Act of Michigan is very clear as to the appropriate notification to be made for meetings and cancellations and rescheduling of any notice of a special meeting. There was some confusion about this week's meetings. December 17th was a regularly scheduled meeting that was canceled due to a lack of agenda items. Cancellation was Buried deep in the documents on demand, it was not posted on an easily accessible place in the website. There is no date on the notice as to when it was canceled and posted. I'm unable to know by looking at it if it was canceled within the time frame, but put forth in the Open Meetings Act of Michigan. If I just quickly glance at the calendar, the meeting still appears on the schedule. It was not removed from the schedule when it was canceled. It's still there this evening. Before I came, I checked again. This is confusing, even for those of us who check the website often. In addition, a special meeting was called for today, December 18, although email notices were sent to those on the email list of documents on demand. If I go to the calendar, there is nothing on the calendar for tonight. I would have to get into the documents on demand where I will find an agenda, but there is no notice of meeting for tonight. Since I see an agenda, I guess I'm supposed to assume that there is a meeting for tonight. For residents trying to participate in local government, this is a dereliction of duty on the part of the governing body. In this case, the township, I believe. I quote the Meetings Act of the Open Meetings Act of Michigan. If the public body directly or indirectly maintains an official internet presence that includes monthly or more frequent updates of public meeting agendas or minutes on a portion of the website shall be included on either the homepage or on a separate web page dedicated to public notices of non-regularly scheduled public meetings and accessible via a prominent and conspicuous link on the website homepage that clearly describes its purpose for public notification of those non-regularly scheduled public meetings. I'm sure you're aware that this is a misdemeanor to fail to follow the Open Meetings Act, and whoever is responsible could find themselves personally liable. That isn't what my words, that is the words that are on the Open Meetings Act. Even those patrons who have navigated the Bear Creek Township website for many years are confused by these unfair practices. These need to be remedied, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Got a follow-up?
I'd like to follow up what Mary said.
Go ahead.
I would not be here tonight, maybe that was part of your plan, but I would not be here tonight had it not been for a friend telling me that this meeting existed. And I think most of you know I've attended meetings since about 2008 or 2009. Pretty good at using the website, but this website for Bear Creek Township is pitiful. If you would look just at the county website, the front page has a calendar that's for every meeting, and you can just look at one calendar. What I had to discover today in order to find a routing to this meeting, I had to go into about 5 or 6 or 7 different little spots on the website in order to find out when this meeting was, if it even existed. It's listed under special meetings and agendas or something. It's not even under a regular meeting. But you need to have one calendar on the front of the website, just like the county has, and it needs to show the different meetings for all your committees, all your different departments on one calendar. Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it. Okay, so what else? We're gonna bring it back up to the board. Okay, we'll close public session, bring it back to the board. Is there anything you want to add? Anything?
No, I've got some of the comments that that either came from the community or the planning commission. But if I can get your document with the your comments, be much appreciated, and then I'll make the appropriate revisions to the plan when the next version is ready. We post it on the project website where people can download it and review it, and we'll have that ready for the January meeting. We're getting close to going out for the 63-day review period where the document is circulated to all the local and state agencies for review, and obviously the public would have 60 days to review and comment on it as well. And then it comes back to the PC after that period for a public hearing, again, to solicit comment before it gets adopted. So we're getting close to the point, I'm thinking maybe at the January PC meeting, the board would be comfortable enough of recommending to the Board of Trustees to get this into the 63-day review period, so we can get some comments from the outside agencies as well as the community. Thank you.
John, would you be able to address the affordability question?
Sure. I think a good definition of affordable housing is every community, and particularly at the county level, each county in the state of Michigan has a what they refer to as the area median income that's established by the state. So every county's got an area median income. And affordable housing is housing that is available at a price point for anybody that makes 80% of the area median income up to 120%. So that would be primarily, affordable housing would be typically a salary for an entry-level teacher, a nurse, firefighter, police officer, somebody that's kind of into that income bracket, which is, they refer to as affordable. That's somebody that salary is sufficient where they can get qualified for rent, to rent a house or an apartment, or their income is sufficient enough where they can get pre-qualified to buy a house if the price point is low. Now, the problem here in Emmett County and other parts of the state is that anybody that's in the 80 to 120% median income is not going to be able to afford a house in the marketplace here. So that's why there's a great need for apartments that are using the tax increment financing tool that's provided by the state in order to provide rents for people that make 80 to 120% of the area median income. So that's really the definition of affordability, is that. So I can take a look at the number, what the area median income is for Emmett County, and at the next meeting I can tell you what the income range would be. And that's adjusted based on family size. So the area median income is different for a one-person household than it is for like a six-person household. So it's a graduated scale that's put together annually by the state of Michigan, by county.
What is that dollar amount for Big Creek Township? The area median income?
I'll have to take a quick look.
Would that be in chapter 3?
Chapter 3, demographics and housing.
What page is that, please? Page 27.
In Deer Creek Township, the median household income that was quantified in 2022 was $68,155. So you would take 80% of that up to 120% of that. That's your median, that's your affordability rate. So then you would take, rule of thumb is 30% of your gross income, monthly gross income, you take a look at for housing costs. And that's what you get pegged in for rent or for a mortgage payment. But yeah, in 2022 it was $68,155.
And then one other thing that I would like to respond to, or maybe you could elaborate to, John, is the comments about, my property specifically is zoned one way, the future land use map identifies it a different way, and the assessing database identifies it a different way, and that's common. The future land use map is looking forward 5 years or more, or within the next 5 years, or even longer. You're not going to have necessarily your property, identified exactly the same. It might be identified within the range of the zoning plan. And then the taxable classification, the 401, or I think 401 is residential. That's gonna be how your property is taxed versus how your property is zoned, which would be farm forest, R1, R2, RR, SR. So those are completely different things. They're within completely different locations in county data and in how we determine what a property is zoned or what a property is taxed as. So I hope that helps. But you're not gonna see your property identified on a future land use map as farm forest necessarily, because that might not be a category within the future land use map.
Why would there be
And that's pretty common.
Why would there be such a difference as to what the future is looking at from what it is now? What determines that?
Growth, utilities, many different things. How the topography of your property perhaps, the suitability of sewer or water. Your property isn't zoned farm forest, by the way, it's zoned R1. So that's very consistent with either the residential transition or the higher density residential.
Okay, bring it back to the board here, Jeff, go ahead, please.
Yes, water and sewer, we continually talk about that, and it's a very major item in how our growth is going to be going into the future. What I'd like to see is a map of our township, and it would be predominantly the northern part of the northern half of our township, where we already have existing sewer lines and or have the access to a sewer tap, like to the city of Petoskey. Because I don't know where we can get potential sewer from, if we're allowed to. But I think that's necessary for us to determine this transitional period, this transitional area for future growth. I don't know where that map would come from, but somebody's gotta have that information out there.
We've already mapped it.
Okay.
I can include it in the next revision.
That'd be great, thank you, Jeff. And again, I'm assuming it's just gonna be the northern half,
Yeah.
so it could be larger than this.
Okay. Anything else? That's good. David? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, John. All right, any other business brought before the board? Oh. Okay, with that, 7:41, I'll consider it. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.